Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Thompson and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL.
Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Thompson, along with my festive partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
Merry Christmas, y'all.
Woo!
That time
Merry
it's the most
Christmas.
wonderful time of the year.
Yeah, it's been pretty incredible. Obviously, not the white Christmas that we're used to. No. I know my area has been a little bit of frost here or there, but nothing too crazy.
No.
But it's now feeling very, very real. I know you've been celebrating for a long stretch here, but now it's official. It's here. We are a mere 4 days away from Christmas, and I'm heading back to Western New York tomorrow, going to visit my family and going to spend Wednesday, Thursday, Friday there. And that's why we're here tonight, to be able to preview this rematch for the AFC East Division Crown. Games this weekend that we're going to talk about are going to discuss why it's such a critical matchup. But tonight's show is brought to you by our sponsors over at Underdog Fantasy. Download the Underdog Fantasy app. Use promo code COVER1. Our friends over at Uncle Jumbos, obviously always enjoying Uncle Jumbos responsibly. I got to go do a taste test of their amazing new Frontier bourbon whiskey, which is incredible, plus some new stuff that's coming up that's going to be really, really good. And tonight, the T-Shirt University sponsorship. We'll be doing the T-Shirt University fresh look later with some of the graphics you put together. But tonight, we are joined. You've heard him before. You know him from the Patriots Beat. You know him from CLNS Media. Our man, Evan Lazar. How we doing, Evan?
I'm doing great. I love that intro, by the way. That's a good intro. I didn't know we were putting it together, but it was really
a gift to ourselves this year. A Christmas gift to ourselves.
Trying to step things up a little bit, try to pretend like we're professional at least.
That's my middle name. Pretend like I'm professional.
Hey, yeah, right. Make it till you make it. That's half the battle. So obviously, we all know what happened the first time here. Crazy conditions. The Patriots took it back to the 1940s, running the ball 46 times.
Just like Belichick's always wanted.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, Bill Belichick wet dream.
Absolutely.
And then since then, obviously, some critical matchups this past week. Everybody watched it. A great game Saturday night, back and forth, and the Colts going out an early lead, the Patriots coming back, and Aaron calling me out saying I wasn't worried. Of course, I was worried. And watching the comeback, and then being able to go through and figure out monsters. Being able to go through, and then the Bills obviously taking care of what they should have, which is a very beatable opponent with the Carolina Panthers. And it has now presented us with the game that we have here, and everything is on the line. Both teams have very manageable matchups afterwards. It is very, very likely that the winner of this game wins the AFC East. And, I don't know where you were at the beginning of the year for expectations of now, but as this climb has come through, and obviously the winning streak, how does it feel to now have it right there in front of the team, and to know that it's really come down to this game in New England for the AFC East title?
Yeah, as much as Boston is a championships or bust type of city, even with this team, I think there's a general feeling of, wow, they're already here, right? They're already in a position to be contending for the division. This could have been a much longer process, a much longer rebuild. And I actually, looking at it going into the offseason, then after the draft with Mac, I did look at Buffalo, and I said their timeline with Josh Allen and eventually winning the division in 2020 once Tom Brady left, and the way that they went about it, the couple of years it did take, but eventually it did take, that was my best case scenario, right? As you draft the quarterback, you hit on the QB, year or two down the line, you start putting all the pieces together. Now the Patriots were lucky enough to expedite the process because of their free agency class, I would say more so than anything. And that's really benefited them in a lot of ways. But you can't ask for any more. If you're a Patriots fan, if you're somebody like me that covers the team, it's been a great year to cover the team. It's been a lot of fun, and one game essentially for the division. Although I will put the caveat in there. You mentioned two easy opponents with the Jaguars and the Dolphins. For the Patriots, playing Miami in Miami is never easy for the Patriots. It is
always historically the weirdest bugaboo for the Patriots.
It is a very, very weird. Exactly. Very, very weird game. I think all of us recently can remember the Miami Miracle in 2018 as one that really, really stood out amongst the more recent losses down there in Miami. So if you're a Bills fan and the Patriots do pull off this game on Sunday against Buffalo, there's still a chance. There's still a chance that they might get upset in Week 18 by Miami, especially if the Dolphins are playing for a wild card spot with their win streak going on.
Yeah, and it's hard to say in 2021 that any game, even where the Bills have Atlanta and the Jets, and I still think they should win, but I also thought they should have beat the Jaguars. So in 2021,
the Jaguars, all things are on the table.
all things are. Right, Detroit winning against the Cardinals, this is such a weird year. So all that's. But you mentioned that free agency class, but I would say that Patriots almost benefited from sort of 2 rounds of free agency and all the guys that they got back from COVID. I think that a lot of people looked at this team and this roster last year, and they fought through games and almost beat the Bills in that first matchup a year ago with a pretty depleted roster in Cam Newton. Then they get a bunch of key contributors back. So it was almost like 2 free agencies for you guys. So, that I think is part of that acceleration that you had mentioned. But what I want to ask you is, Patriots had a pretty easy ride for about 20 years to the AFC East. A little bit of a bump in the road with the Jets during those Rex Ryan years. Is this the biggest AFC East game that we've seen? Because, as much as I don't want it to come down to a game like this for the Bills, I've always also wanted some of like the old Miami Dolphins versus
the drama.
Those big, everything's on the line, in division game, the division's on the line. I'm trying to think, since back to those Rex Ryan days against you guys, has there been a big game like this in the AFC East that you can remember?
Yeah, and the Patriots with Rex Ryan, for the most part, won in the regular season against Rex Ryan. It was the playoff game that really tripped them up once they got into that divisional round game against the Jets. So going back on it in this particular matchup, Patriots-Bills, I think you'd have to go back to Bledsoe Kelly in the 90s to find the last time when both teams had it together at the same time, and both teams had a viable team to win the division and compete against one another, because the Bills were really good for a while there in the 90s, and the Patriots were okay, but they weren't really a powerhouse like they were with Brady. And then Brady comes and the Bills kind of drop off a little bit. So the Patriots and the Bills haven't been good at the same time really in generations. I can't even think of a time in history where they've both been good, because the Patriots history, obviously pre-Brady, is not very good in general. Right. So it's kind of hard to find another time where both teams were competing. I think people maybe a little bit older than us could
probably find something,
to speak to it a little bit better, maybe in the 70s with Grogan and John Hanna and those teams for the Patriots.
70s Bills were not very good.
Yeah, I was just going to say, honestly, it really might not exist, because 60s Bills, the Patriots were horrible.
Yeah.
70s Patriots, the Bills were horrible.
Right.
Neither team was any good in the 80s.
Yeah, the Patriots made the Super Bowl in 85. They lost to the Bears 56-10. The
Bills had the number 1 pick in the draft that year.
Yeah, that was like a one-hit wonder type of thing. They upset Dan Marino and the Dolphins, the AFC Championship game, and until Bledsoe came, that was the biggest Patriots win in franchise history. Was winning the AFC that year. So yeah.
I remember this discussion in 2019 at the end of Brady's last year there, and obviously playing through some of the injuries and obviously the questions, and the reason he ended up in Tampa Bay was he didn't look like the Brady that we had seen.
Yeah.
That week 16 game there, the Bills came in 10-4 and technically had some hopes there, but it wasn't. They were still heavy underdogs. They were still not really seen. It wasn't seen on even footing in any sense. It was, hey, maybe if we pull something off here. This year coming in and having it be, you've seen the spread anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5, coming in off the other game that was already 14-10, and now seeing the two teams where everything's right there. it really is something special that we just haven't historically seen of two teams like this matched up with this much hanging in the balance. It's really incredible.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun because the division, not to, it's a first world problem to have, I guess is the way to put it, that we've never had much competition in the division in my lifetime, at least in terms of the 2000s. But it's great to have some parity and have some competitiveness and a team. It's just more fun. It's more fun when there's another team that you're really going up against. The Patriots in the early part of the Brady dynasty had Peyton's Colts, right? That wasn't in the division, but at least they had another team in the AFC that were equal to them, that could really go toe to toe and win some games against the Patriots in a big spot. So I suppose that was a little bit like this, but it just wasn't a division opponent. So this is a lot of fun. This is exactly what we want in this division. You don't want it to be a cakewalk. Trust me, as great as it was also a little bit of a letdown.
Well, 20 years of it.
The division games just didn't matter, though.
Sure, 20 years.
They rolled out of bed and were 5-1 or 6-0 in the division every single year, and it felt like the season really didn't start until they got to the playoffs because they weren't even playing for anything other than seeding in the regular season. So this is a lot more fun. Trust me.
To your point earlier, though, I would have liked a few more years of what you guys had of just cakewalking through the division for a couple of years. But it is a fun big game. But so let's jump right into this matchup. And our friend Mark Schofield was on the first time we met the Patriots. And I sort of talked to him about this because I still believe, even after that matchup, where we didn't see Mac Jones throw the ball at all, right? It was a laugh and running joke, the 3 throws, and with that wind, we still and then you guys went off, had a bye, came into this last game. He had a pretty nice game against Indy in that second half. I still think, going into that last Bills game, everybody was crowning Mac Jones as the next Tom Brady. This guy is a superstar. He's one of the best quarterbacks we've seen, right? I think, Bills fans were sort of on the opposite end of that spectrum, and like, Mac Jones is trash. This guy, I can't wait to get my hands on him. He's terrible. He's somewhere in between, right? Like, he's not as good as the media wanted to make him out to be. He's not as bad as Bills fans want to say. Take us through how you've sseen Mac Jones progress here throughout the year, because I trust you're a film guy. I trust your eye on this stuff. I want to get your opinion on him.
So I'll say to be as unbiased as possible, right? Matt can still make some rookie mistakes. We saw that against Indianapolis, where he will still turn the ball over on occasion. He still has every once in a while one of those throws that makes you scratch your head. It's not something that's happened as much as you might expect from a rookie quarterback. They have been able to manage him and keep him within the framework pretty well. But he will have one of those moments like on Saturday night where Darius Leonard just gets him, right? He thinks Darius Leonard is dropping one way. Leonard changes directions and falls underneath. And we were talking about it on my podcast, and I thought my co-host Alex Barth brought up a really good point, which was linebackers in the SEC don't make that interception, right? You don't see guys move at the college level as like dynamically as Darius Leonard did on that particular play. So there are certainly a ton of learning moments from Mac. But I think the one thing that you definitely see from him that is why it's so impressive, beyond the record and some of the statistics and stuff like that, is he plays so well within the confines of the system, and he makes the decisions within the confines of that scheme that he's supposed to make 9 times out of 10. And to see a quarterback this early on in an offense that's notoriously extremely complex, be able to play within structure and on time as often as Mac Jones does, it is really impressive. And you see the downfield accuracy, you see the timing, you see the ability to progress and go through a full field progression against the defense. There was a concept that they called against Indianapolis. They called it 3 times against the Colts, and he hit it 3 different times, 3 different ways. You just don't really see quarterbacks 13, 14 year starts into their careers be able to do stuff like that as well as Mac does, right? He has the front side covered. He gets to the backside dig. He gets to the check down. He gets the ball out on time. He doesn't get sacked a ton. He doesn't sit there and hold the ball in the pocket all day long. He doesn't try to do things outside of his realm, right? He kind of understands his limitations and understands that he's not Josh Allen. He's not going to be able to run around and throw the ball across his body 60 yards down the field. So he really gets how to play to his style and to the Patriots style so well, so quickly. And I think that that's why you hear so much of the positive buzz about Mac from the national media, is because most of the time rookie quarterbacks look like Trevor Lawrence, right? Where there's flashes and there's moments, but it's pretty inconsistent on the whole. And I think Josh Allen was that way also. And then at some point with the good ones like Allen, the switch flips, right? And all of a sudden now he's playing like a really good quarterback. That's how it normally goes, is that the development, isn't linear and there's steps back and stuff like that. With Mac, it's been pretty consistently good since he got here in training camp. And that, I think, is what's been the most impressive thing.
And I think one big part of his success is coming to a team like the Patriots where you have a really good offensive line in front of him. And I think there was a tale of two halves of how you impact Mac Jones in that first half was getting pressure. You saw some pressure coming from the edges in that game, some pressures that he didn't see coming. And he, for a rookie, actually impresses me on film that he handles pressure pretty well for not being an athletic guy. He can manipulate the pocket and do some of those things that we had seen Brady do for years, right? Not super athletic, but can manipulate the pocket and escape pressures. But then in that second half, when you guys made that comeback and impressed me in being able to come back in a game through the air, which I wasn't sure that the Patriots were going to be able to do, clean pockets. Mac Jones had a lot of time to make those decisions, even though he doesn't always need the time. It's similar. I hate to drop the Brady comparison, but it's similar to Brady in Tampa right now, where he has a good offensive line. He doesn't need the time. He gets the ball out quick, but just to have those clean pockets makes life a lot easier. And out of rookie quarterbacks, it's been a long time since usually you see a rookie first rounder come onto a team because the team's no good. And it usually starts in the trenches. He's come into a nice situation where I think he's benefited from a very good offensive line. And we saw it in the run game in that Buffalo game where they were just more physical than the Bills front. Can you talk about, both sides of that run game and pass game, or what you've seen from this offensive line this year?
The offensive line in New England is always fantastic. And they don't have Dante Scarnecchia anymore, who is the legendary offensive line coach that they've had for 2 decades. He's retired now, but it's his system. It's his rules. It's his techniques. It's his fundamentals. They're still coaching, and the coaches that are here now, Carmen Brusello is their offensive line coach. He learned under Scarnecchia, and Scarnecchia taught him the system for a year or two before Dante retired. So this is still got Scar's fingerprints all over it. And because of that, there's so much continuity. There's so much sound technique and fundamentals with their blocks and the way that they get into things, the way they communicate. But what's really leveled out this offensive line and gotten it playing so well was a couple of different things. First of all, Trent Brown came back. That was massive. He goes back at right tackle. He was out for a while with the calf injury. Now he's back. When they came into the season, they envisioned Trent Brown at right tackle and Shaq Mason at right guard being 2 bulldozers on that right side that they could just run people over. Shaq is one of the best right guards in football, one of the best run blockers in football on the offensive line, and Trent's 380 pounds. So they really thought that those 2 guys would just be able to bully ball people. Now they've gotten back to that with those 2 healthy in the lineup. And then at left guard, they've put Ted Karras, who played for the Patriots for a while. Then he played down in Miami for a year. He's back with the Patriots. He's at left guard now, and this has been one of the more surprising things of the season was Michael Onwenu, who they drafted in the 6th round last year, made an all-rookie team, AP all-rookie team.
Looked like a huge steal.
Yeah, huge steal. He's been on the bench, and he's really been their 6th offensive lineman now in those 6-0 line sets.
When they bring him in, though, everyone knows what you're doing, and they still can't stop it. Yeah, that's crazy to me.
And what's crazy about it, and they ran some unbalanced line to the left against Buffalo too, just to keep it honest. But when they put him on the right side, it's Shaq, Trent Brown, and Onwenu, who's 340. So there's a metric ton of weight on that side of the line. And I mean, good luck, right? Especially in short yardage goal line type of situations. So they've been able to play bully ball with their line because of that. It's also a very good pass blocking line. Since they put Ted Karras in the starting lineup, I think a big reason why he's played more snaps over Onwenu during this win streak or 7 out of 8 is because he's a really good communicator. He's a veteran player, and he used to play center in the Patriots system and some guard, obviously. So with him and David Andrews, they essentially have 2 veteran centers with Mac. So point out pressures, to point out blitzers, to pass stuff off post snap and get things blocked up. Having those two cerebral minds in the middle of the line versus having a second-year player there instead that might not know those little tricks and things like that as well has really stabilized the thing too. So Ted Karras back in at left guard, Trent Brown healthy at right tackle. Now this line is, I mean, I don't rank offensive lines, but I know Brandon Thorne does. He does a great job on Twitter. They're a top 5 offensive line in football when everybody's out there.
Now, we don't have to go through each group on the skill positions, but there's a chance here. We usually do the show on Wednesdays, and that's when we get our first injury reports. And I was just talking to Greg offline, like, have we gotten any information about what's going on? Because we saw some guys leave the game last week, and we know Bourne ended up on the COVID list. Not sure how that's going to progress for him this week, but there is a chance you could be without Aguilar, without Harry, without Bourne, and still without Harris, right? Harris hasn't come off.
Yeah, so Harris has the hamstring that he actually suffered in the Bills game.
Right.
Originally, the hope was that they held him out for the bye. Obviously, they had the bye, and then they held him out against Indianapolis. And the hope was that would allow him to play in this Buffalo game. If not, then I would have thought that he would have gone on injured reserve for the 3 games and then come back in the 4th game. So I think that they're at least cautiously, he did practice in a limited capacity last week. So I think they're cautiously optimistic that Damian Harris will at least be able to give them something on Sunday. The wide receiver room is scary. Now, they could come out with 2 tight ends, only play 1 or 2 wide receivers against Buffalo and run the ball 45 times again, and then they just go about it that way. But you would think the Bills would be a little bit more prepared for it and a little bit more up for that type of game. So if you have to throw the football, N'Keal Harry finally had a big play, 43-yard catch against Indianapolis during the little comeback that they put together. And then he gets clocked over the middle by Andrew Sendejo and gets concussed. So him and Nelson Aguilar both took hits to the head. Like you said, we'll find out tomorrow if it is officially a concussion or if it was just a scare, but it doesn't sound great, I would say, for N'Keal. He has a history of concussions dating back to his high school playing days. So his head injuries are always a little bit touchy of a subject with him. And with Nelson Aguilar, he got clocked pretty good in the helmet-to-helmet hit as well. So we'll see. Right now, they truly only have Jacoby Myers and Gunnar Olszewski, who's a punt returner, as healthy wide receivers. That's it. They have Christian Wilkerson and Trey Nixon on the practice squad. They're on the practice squad for a reason. Christian Wilkerson was decent in training camp. He's obviously not Randy Moss, but he can go out there and probably play at a somewhat respectable level. And the last one, Bourne, they are optimistic Bourne is going to be cleared, especially with these new protocols. He's vaccinated. He has no symptoms as of right now. So there is some optimism there as well. So I would say the most optimistic are probably an Aguilar and Bourne coming back and being ready for this game just because of N'Keal Harry's history with concussions.
No, and obviously always scary to be able to see those. And now in this new world, we have time frames to make our best guesses on hamstrings and things like that. But concussions are always a black box. And now you add in COVID, it's just guessing left and right. Speaking of new bodies in and out, when the Bills played the Patriots first time, obviously had Cole Beasley. The news broke today that he has tested positive for COVID and right now looks as though he will be out for this game. It looked like he will require the 10-day window. And on the other side, Kyle Duggar being back in. He was out with COVID in the first matchup. That shift in the ability to manage and have the versatile chess piece back in the slot. And now a lot of Bills fans asking me today, hey, what are we going to do? My plan the entire season was Emmanuel Sanders was kind of the backup plan in the slot. Hey, it's okay. You put Gabe Davis in outside, Emmanuel Sanders kicks in. He's probably just as good in the slot as he is outside. We're just using him more for the outside. Well, now we don't have Emmanuel Sanders. So now it's been a combination of, okay, are we going to see bigger sets with Jake Kumaro outside and put Diggs in the slot? Are we going to see Isaiah McKenzie used regularly as a slot receiver? Are we going to run more 2 tight end with Tommy Sweeney and going more that route to be able to do it? I think Dawson Knox takes on a little bit. Coming in from a game plan standpoint, having Duggar back, what do you think they're going to do? My assumption is that we're going to see bracket coverage on Diggs, JC Jackson on Gabe Davis, and hey, we dare you to beat us with the rest. Would you be surprised if it's not that path?
I wouldn't be shocked. I think at certain times in the past, and I don't know if JC is quite on this level yet, but they definitely, with Gilmore, with Revis, they just let those guys go get the best guy, right? They didn't really do the double number one takes number two, all that much with Gilmore, with Revis. Those guys, when you played Stephon Diggs, Gilmore got Stephon Diggs, right? That was sort of the way that they did it. I don't know if they feel like JC is quite on that level yet. He did get Diggs in the first matchup, but I think in terms of that first matchup, the Patriots, I was stunned by how much man coverage they played against Buffalo the first time. And when you start to get into the game plan the second time around and how much the wind and the weather was a factor in that first matchup, I do wonder if they felt like testing Josh Allen to throw the ball down the field into man coverage with 50-mile-an-hour winds was kind of a game plan change, right? And into what they necessarily planned during the week to when they got to the game and the wind and the conditions were that poor. So this time around, I would honestly be really surprised if they play as much man as they did the first time. Now, not having Cole Beasley definitely helps, because the big shortfall to that plan of playing man coverage was Miles Bryant on Cole Beasley. Bryant is not Jonathan Jones in man coverage. He's his replacement. Jonathan Jones on injured reserve, is out for the year. And Bryant is a much better zone corner than he is a man-to-man corner. And I hated that matchup in the first one. I was like, if they're going to play man, then Beasley is going to probably have his way with Miles Bryant. Now there is no Beasley. So maybe they do go to more man again this week. But I look at what other teams have done against Buffalo, and you have those cover two shells that have just been working so well against the Bills and Josh Allen. And the Patriots have played a lot more zone this year than they have in years past without Gilmore now being in Carolina. So to me, the first time you played a lot of man, you manned up in weather conditions that allowed you to kind of man up and hang tight with those guys. Maybe this time around, you throw that game plan out and you play a lot of zone and give Josh Allen a little bit something different to look at this time around. So I actually expect them to play a hefty amount of zone coverage. They did it against Justin Herbert, and that was sort of the way that they limited the Chargers offense, was the 2 deep zones and 3 deep zones. So maybe a little bit more zone coverage this time around.
Yeah, and we're going to see, obviously, a lot of folks in the chat talking about, the combination of what they're going to use. Is it going to be Sweeney? Is it going to be McKenzie?
Right.
I think this is going to be a great tryout game for Isaiah McKenzie. We haven't seen him get that many reps. He hasn't looked really nuanced in there. He does a lot of the jet sweep. I'm excited to see that back. We didn't see much of that in the first matchup with the Patriots, seeing that jet motion to just stretch this field vertically. I think with McKenzie being a bigger piece, we'll see more of that. I am curious to see what that translates to in his route running, his ability to get out there. Let's flip over now to the offensive line against this Patriots front. Obviously, I'm hoping we get the line that we had back. Right now, Deanna Dawkins is not back. I think that he sounds like, from the comments from Sean McDermott, that there's a path for him to get back. Taking the comments from John Feliciano that he made on social media, he was in the ER on Sunday going through. So I don't know how to project anything other than he's going to not be available for this game as well. So if Dawkins is back, I think at least we see Dawkins back at left tackle. That flips Spencer Brown back to right tackle.
That's mostly our starting line for the year.
Darrell Williams flip into right guard, and then Ike Bacher at left guard. What I'm concerned with is the depth of this front for the Patriots. Aaron does it all the time, saying, hey, people don't talk about Dietrich Wise and Lawrence Guy. Like, Judon gets rightfully a ton of credit. Christian Barmore flashes as a rookie. Talk about some of these other guys that maybe fans don't see as often. Lawrence Guy, Devon Godchow, that we saw come over from the Patriots, you're from the Dolphins.
Yeah.
The depth on this front is so concerning that you could just bring waves and there's not a drop off.
Yeah, Devon Godchaux probably had the best game of his career against the Bills in that first matchup. Maybe certainly his best game as a Patriot. But you talk about those two guys, Guy and Wise. I'll start with Guy. He is a quintessential Patriots 5 technique, right? You're just not going to move the guy He's great at absorbing double teams, defeating double teams, taking on combination blocks, play side blocks where you're on the front side and you got to hold up in the trenches. And by allowing him to occupy all these blockers and eat up these double teams, it allows Dante Hightower and Jawan Bentley and Van Noy and those linebackers, Duggar, Phillips, when they're in the box, to free flow, just go wherever they need to go to the football and be not have anybody on them, not have any blockers on them. So Guy is an immovable object, takes on a lot of the dirty work on that defensive line, and is a huge part of their early down run defense, the first and second down packages. Godshaw, what I think has taken me by surprise with Godshaw in a good way is that he's got some versatility to him as well. They've played him some at end and some at on the nose. So he can really play from like a 0 to, I guess, maybe a full 5 technique, but usually it's more like a 4 technique in the B gap. But he can go pretty much across the line as well, like Lawrence Guy can. Lawrence doesn't play too much on the nose, but he plays a lot, 1 technique, 2 tech, 3 tech, stuff like that. So those are, kind of the big run stuffers in the middle. Dietrich Wise is more pass rusher than he is run defender, I would say, but he's a long guy, and he knows how to use his length. He's 6'6", 6'7", one of the taller players on the team, really long arms, a good feel for pass rushing and how to defeat blockers, how to set up blockers, how to use his length, certainly. So those two guys.
I didn't see any injury designation. Why the small snap count for Wise on Saturday?
The run defense, he's not really much of their run defense, much of a run stopper, I should say. He's really more of a sub-package rusher that they bring in passing situations.
Okay. The fact that Dietrich Wise,
he'll get pushed back.
The fact that Michael Onwenu and Dietrich Wise are just rotational, situational pieces is infuriating to hear you talk about.
Yeah. So Dietrich Wise is, I think, one of the cool things about the Patriots, really up and down their roster, but especially in certain spots like the defensive line, is they have the right guy for the situation all the time, right? So they have guys like Lawrence Guy, Devon Godshaw, Carl Davis that will play a ton on first down. They bring those are 3 of their best run stuffers. They put those 3 guys on the line on first down. It's really difficult to run on that line on first down. Then second down comes in and they do a line change, right? And out comes Davis, and in comes Barmore and Wise, and then they get after the passer with those players. So they have a lot of versatility and a lot of, Belichick is so good at mixing and matching, right? This down, we're going to play this down, we're going to play that. And they have these guys that are just interchangeable based off of what they're trying to accomplish. And I think that's what makes their defensive line so formidable. And you look at this Bills offensive line, I always look at where the weak links potentially could be, because the Patriots do a great job as well, obviously, with their scouting and their game planning of, okay, your right guard, I'm just saying theoretically, your right guard's not very good. Well, here comes Christian Barmore over the right guard 10 times. And we know eventually if your right guard's not very good in pass blocking, then Christian Barmore is going to break through. If your right tackle is better than your left tackle, well, then we're going to put Judon on the left tackle and we're going to let him rush on the weaker rusher. So if there is a guy on your roster that the Patriots feel like they can exploit, they will put their best player over that defender, over that blocker, and they will go right at him. And that's something that I think is another thing to look out for. Like, for example, not to pick on Spencer Brown, but he played a rough game over at left tackle, right? So if he has to be over there again, then you can guarantee that Judon's going to be over there a ton, and they're going to go after them. So it's, I know Bills fans, I'm sorry about your offensive line. I know it's tough. I know
it has not been the strength of this season.
No. Yeah. And it's kind of, I think the one thing with the Bills that I wanted to ask you guys about and talk to you guys about tonight was they are running so much more option stuff than I can ever remember. Maybe especially last year, right? I watched a ton of Bills last year, and their drop back passing game was so good that they didn't need the RPOs as much, and they didn't need the read option plays with Allen as much. And now you look at that Carolina tape, and it's like the RPOs and the read option type of plays, and then like bootlegs, right, are like their two most consistent offenses. And I'm mind blown that the offensive line has put this drop back passing game so far backwards in terms of what it was last year, that Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and Dawson Knox and Gabe Davis, who I think is a decent complementary receiver, they can't just spread it out and throw it anymore because the line just doesn't hold up. And I think Josh Allen also, you see him get a little bit skittish at times behind the line and not want to hang in the pocket because he doesn't trust the line to keep him protected. So it's really a much different Bills offense to me in terms of what they're good at this year than what they were good at last year.
I've said it a few times now. Usually around Christmas, you see a social media post of the quarterback buys all the offensive linemen some TVs or some grills or stuff like that. And I said this year, those guys need to pull together and get Josh Allen something, because he actually makes them look better in a lot of
so many times.
Many times he has saved them from bad sacks or terrible breakdowns where he's able to get out and extend. And I think, I don't love Allen in the option stuff. I think that sometimes he's slow to process some of that stuff still. Not that I don't think he's not intelligent enough for it. I just think that that's not his best, threat in the game, but it does hold up those offensive or those defensive linemen. It gives you some time, right? I am in favor of the bootleg stuff. I'll always be in favor of that bootleg stuff with Josh Allen, no matter what. But I do think they've had to do some of that stuff, like you said, to offset.
The RPO at least gets them to pause for a minute to think, like, oh, is he giving? And just it's sad. Right, we need that split second.
You're right, because they hit that glance RPO to, I think it was to Davis in the game against Carolina, where he just runs the backside slant, and then the Singletary touchdown was some smoke and mirrors type of stuff too, right? They have the jet motion, and then they pair it with the read option, and it holds the backside on the read option, and it gives them the hole. And it just, the fact that this offense was how much talent they have at quarterback and at the skill positions is resorting to smoke and mirrors just to keep them protected is mind blowing to me, because I just, it was nothing like that last year. Last year, it was 3, 4, 5 wide at times, empty, let's air this thing out. Right.
And dare you to stop us.
Yeah. And people couldn't stop it. Right. Nobody could all year long. So it's really interesting. And I think you mentioned earlier about Kyle Duggar playing in this matchup and not playing in the matchup a couple weeks ago. And now that the Bills have had to go into some of this option package with Josh Allen, having a player like Duggar back for the Patriots, I think is really massive in this game, especially without Beasley, because now the Patriots can play their 3 safety nickel and have Duggar as somebody that is kind of like an Allen spy, right? So, they're not going to use him exactly like a spy all the time, but somebody that's going to probably be that force player on those option plays responsible for Josh Allen, right? If Josh Allen keeps it, it's going to be Duggar. When they played Lamar Jackson in 2020, Duggar, it was his coming out party, at least for Patriots fans, was in that game against Baltimore, because he was the guy that was always responsible for the backside contain on Lamar Jackson. When they ran those option plays, they were crashing the end down to take away the run. And if Lamar pulled it, then Duggar was right there in his face to kind of have that force. So he's a big part of what they can do in the box, because he's 225, 230, and basically plays like a linebacker in a safety number. So I think that's one element of this that's really going to be interesting, is if they go heavier Buffalo and they put Sweeney and Knox out there and they try some of this option stuff. Well, the Patriots have some really athletic and versatile safeties in Phillips and Duggar that can really put you in binds if you try to run those types of schemes against them.
So ultimately, obviously the last game was heavily impacted by the weather. I just checked it again just in case. Sunday's looking like 40, light winds, no real precipitation. It seems like it's going to be about as good as you can ask for.
Almost like last week in Buffalo.
Very, very similar. Actually, a little bit warmer.
Warmer, yeah.
But yeah, very similar. Light wind, nothing crazy. What do you expect? What are you expecting to see this weekend, and what's your score prediction?
So I'm a little hesitant about this game from a Patriots perspective, because I think the first time the game script could not have gone any better for New England. It played out exactly how the Patriots, the weather essentially made the game into the way the Patriots are probably going to want to play the game anyways, right? I think they went into that game looking at the Indianapolis tape and say, Indianapolis against Buffalo, and saying, let's replicate that. So maybe they went in with 15 to 20 passing plays they felt good about instead of 3, but it turned out to be basically exactly the way that they wanted to play. So just off of, probabilities, it's not going to go exactly the same. And it's probably going to be a little
or
bit
if it does, it might be harder to hold the Bills to 10 this time.
Right.
Rather than doing the exact same thing and putting up 14 might not be enough.
Right. And I just feel like the game script and the game flow, you're never going to play 2 games in the division within a couple of weeks and have both games look exactly the same. Just, this one's going to get a little bit different than that one, certainly. So from that perspective, if you're a Patriots fan, you just want the game to go the same exact way. Why not? Let's play bully ball. Let's run the ball 45 times and let's play the exact same game. But that's probably not going to be able to happen this time around. So this one, in a weird way, as close as that first game was, it really did feel like the Patriots, because they led from start to finish for the most part, it felt like they controlled the game from start to finish. This one feels like it's going to be a lot more like a heavyweight bout where each team is going to get some haymakers in and each team is going to have a lead and it's going to go back and forth a little bit more. And that type of game, as much as I have praised Mac and as much as I think the Patriots operation has gone a long way, they have not yet proved that they can go back and forth, toe-to-toe with a good offense and keep up on the scoreboard. They haven't gotten to that point yet. All 5 of their losses, they trailed in the game for long periods of time in the game. They had to mount comebacks. They came close, but they didn't actually get over the hump and complete the comeback. So if I'm the Bills, I feel cautiously optimistic about this game just because it can't possibly go the same way as it did a couple weeks ago. And it's going to be a little bit more open than it was the last time. So with that being said, score prediction, I don't know. This is a total toss-up, right? This one is really difficult to predict in terms of basically who dictates the terms, I would say, and probably who gets an early lead and then could kind of decide how the game is going to unfold is most likely going to be the team that wins the game. And I give the slight edge to the Patriots just because they're at home, but I really think that this is going to be another down to the wire type of game.
No, we appreciate it very much, man. Let the fans know where they can find more of your work.
You can find me on Twitter at EZLazar and on CLNSmedia.com and on Patriots Press Pass. I'll be at the game on Sunday, so if you want some perspective from the other side, if you will, then you can follow us on our post-game show, Patriots Press Pass. We do a show every week right after the game, right after kickoff or final whistle.
The only Patriots beat guy that I actually follow is you. So you do a great job.
Thank you.
You do a good job breaking them down. So
yeah, the rest of them are annoying.
I don't disagree with you.
We appreciate it very much, man. Have a very happy holidays here, Evan. Enjoy time. And we'll hope for a good, healthy, entertaining game on Sunday. And hopefully, for our sake, it flips around the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. And I have a feeling there might be a third matchup. I don't know what tells me that, but I think we're not done, guys. So maybe I'll see you guys in like 6 weeks or whatever it's going to be.
I'd like that.
Very, very much in play. We appreciate it.
All right, brother.
Awesome. Sounds good. Have a good one, guys. Man.
All right. I wish I could argue with him. The things that we laid out and the guys in the chat were like, all right, there's enough about how good their defensive line is and how much our offensive line struggles. We get it. I wish I could now counter everything he said. No, this is why he was wrong, and we're going to be just fine. Don't worry about it. No, those matchups concern me. I'm concerned about the versatility in their safeties and their ability to cause confusion in some of the things that we had going well. I'm concerned about the depth of their defensive line and their ability to take advantage of our offensive line. I'm concerned about the strength of their offensive line and their ability to play. The one thing that gives me some genuine hope here is that I do think there's legitimate ability for Josh in this passing game to put up the points, to put pressure on Mac Jones. And I think that, right, wrong, or indifferent, regardless of how that game went, Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier didn't have to show their cards of how they were going to play Mac Jones. They obviously, weren't able to stop the rushing game to the degree they wanted. I think you and I both pointed out many things of why, hey, ultimately, and I tried to make that point to Evan, that I kind of hope they do try to do the exact same thing, because
because unless you're going to get off whatever it was, a 70-yard run.
Yeah, 200, even getting that 244 yards, 11 first downs, and 14 points is a loss.
Right.
If they do that again on Sunday, 244 yards, 11 first downs, and 14 points, the Bills win. Right. The Bills will beat that. So they need to do something different. I hope they try to do the exact same thing, because I don't think they'll be able to control. The wind was half of their defense that night. Josh Allen would hit both of those touchdowns to Stephon Diggs. The deep ball, Diggs would have caught it. The back shoulder throw where he roasted J.C. Jackson, he would have caught it. That's 2 touchdowns. Like, those are plays that the wind were the reason they didn't catch those, not the Patriots defense. I hope they do try to do the same thing.
Yeah. Also, the wind got, I think, a little bit in the Bills' head, because we clearly saw in that fourth quarter, Josh throwing against the wind, that he could do it, right? Like, we answered that question, that he can throw into the wind and have some success. So I think if they went back and could get, Sean McDermott always says, oh, we wish we could have some plays back. I think that if they could go back in that game and rewind, that they would maybe lean on that a little bit earlier in that game. But my thing is, he was talking about how the Bills offense looks a lot different this year, and it does, and that's going to happen year over year. You're going to have some differences in how your team looks, but they just got off of beating Carolina and putting up 31 points on a Carolina defense that when I watched the Carolina defense, I had a ton of concerns with how fast they fly around on the ball, how they get their hands on balls.
DVOA and metrics, they're not far off of the Patriots.
They're not far off. I think they're a better pass rushing team as a whole. I think Judon is on another level than some of the guys, but Burns is right there
with Judon.
Burns is right there, and on a whole, I think they have more with Reddick and some of the other things that they can do in the pass rush. And the Bills were still able to put up 31 points. And I think that point is not getting talked about enough here this week. I think people are talking about how, the Bills won in a flawed effort against.
They think of Carolina as just a trash team.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong, they are a trash offense. They are.
And their special teams isn't great, and they didn't have a kicker, so all that goes against them.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people are discrediting the Bills' offensive performance in that game, and putting up 31 points in the NFL against any defense in the NFL is a tough task to do. Brian Daboll spoke on that this week. I think sometimes we get so lost in the pursuit of perfection and chasing the historical year that the Bills had last year, where they're dropping 30, it felt like, every single week. That's difficult to do. And if I don't know that they're going to be able to drop 30 plus on this Patriots defense. I do think this Patriots defense presents some different types of problems than Carolina does. But I do think that there's a potential for them to drop in that range of 26 to 30 points on them. And I don't know if the Patriots can keep up with that type of pace.
Yeah, they'll need to. And I think a further point of that Carolina game, it wasn't like the offense for Carolina was gifting it to the Bills. That all 5 of the Bills scoring drives were 46 yards or further. And that was the only one under 50 yards. The rest of them were 50 yards or more. So it wasn't like they were converting on short fields and cashing it in from plus territory in Carolina territory.
Right.
They'll need to be able to have, and we'll talk about it here. I think it's a good time to look at our T-Shirt University fresh look. One of the big factors, and it always is, but especially in a game like this with a rookie quarterback, is we need to be able to manage the turnover differential. Yeah. And I think that
it's been non-existent for Buffalo lately.
Yeah. Being able to figure out how we're going to manage that, I think is a big piece. And you put together a great graphic of how to share it.
Thanks. Yeah. So usually during the week, I go through explosive plays, right? But another thing that I put in for toxic differential is turnover differential. And so we'll talk about some of the other stats that I looked at this week. And this was another one of those that was just super close when you look at it. So for people that are listening on the podcast, I'll read it through to you. Turnovers 4. Patriots have 20 interceptions and 7 fumbles. Bills have 17 interceptions and 10 fumbles. Both teams, Bills, that was a lot early on in the year. They were off to a hot start in the NFL in terms of turnovers. Over the last month, that slowed down quite a bit. You saw a couple turnovers last week, but that Klein interception was late in the game. That was kind of a weird one that added to the interception total. So they do have to get back on track here. But then you look at turnovers against. So Patriots have only 10 interceptions on the year. Mac Jones, for a rookie quarterback, done pretty well, but there's been times where he's turned the ball over. I think you allude to it. I wish there was a statistic for amount of dropped interceptions because he might lead the league in dropped interception rate.
Yeah, since no one else has shown me otherwise, I'm going to declare that Mac Jones
he's the champion
in dropped interceptions.
It seems like every week that I watch him, that he hits somebody right.
I notice his more than anybody else's.
Yeah, he definitely hit some guys in the numbers. So, but the Bills, I mean, we saw it even a week ago.
No, the Panthers game.
Game.
I joked about it with Anthony. We missed you dearly in the post game show. That you could have run a drinking contest, and how many times I said almost interception.
There was one play where 3 guys had a shot at an interception, just went right through all 3 of them. I mean, even in that Tampa Bay game, Dane Jackson gets his hand on a ball. Micah almost gets that tip. Like, though, there's very close to having.
And those early in the year when the Bills were leading the NFL in turnover differential and leading the NFL in turnovers, those were falling into a guy's hands.
Correct. And so they need to find a way to get back to that. But so again, for the Patriots, it was 10 interceptions, 8 fumbles on the year. And for the Bills, it's 13 interceptions and 6 fumbles against. Again, those interceptions for Josh have really come over this last 5 weeks or so. He did a really good job early in the year, not turning the ball over. So again, they got to get back to the success they had in turnover differential early in the year. But on the year, both teams, when you look at it as a total turnover differential, New England's +9, Bills are +8. That's a super thin margin. And really in a game like this, whoever can come away with that +1 in turnover differential in a game like this, that might make all the difference.
Yeah. And I think, as you talk about it, the other piece before we get into the full matchup itself from a DVOA standpoint, you talked about the explosive plays. And that's another area where, not shockingly, I think you brought it up pre-show. Maybe we were kind of hoping that the Colts would put it on the Patriots and maybe tilt this a little bit further. But not shockingly, the Patriots have more explosive runs. So for everybody listening here, it's a comparison both on pass and rush on offense and pass and rush on defense. And not surprisingly, the Patriots have more explosive runs. They have 52 explosive runs on offense. That's the 4th most in the NFL. The Bills, maybe a little surprisingly, have 42, which is 11th. I think that's higher than a lot of people would estimate. The one that surprised me was, and it shocked me, more so coming into the first matchup because it's the second time I've seen it. Yeah. The New England Patriots have more explosive passes than the Buffalo Bills. They have 47 20-plus yard passes. The Bills have 45. I would assume a great deal of those are yak and not air yards. So
his air yards passes are low, right?
The 47 versus 45. Josh's are a high preponderance of air yards. Max are a high preponderance of yak. But I was just shocked that on total, they have more. I would have never guessed that.
No, I wouldn't either. And ultimately, it doesn't matter, right? Like how you get to them. It's you got to get those explosive plays. The interesting thing is, again, so we had the matchup with the Bills or with the Patriots and Bills. Mac only had 3 passes, and then they had a bye week, and then he had some explosive last, but they only had 3, I think, explosive pass plays in that game because they were 44 last time we had seen them, and they were much higher in rank in the league. So they've dropped down to 10th, where the Bills are at 11th in explosive passes. So again, super thin margins here whenever you're looking at these two teams on paper. And Bills could easily take over that lead in 1 week's time. So again, whoever flips those plus or minus in any of these types of categories, that's going to be who walks away with this game. If the Bills can generate some explosive, say 3 or 4 explosive pass plays and limit the Patriots, which we'll get to in a second, the Bills have done a much better job than anyone in the league of eliminating the explosive pass plays. And we talked about this the first time Patriots and Bills met. I never want to not have Tre'Davious White. There's no scenario where I never want to have Tre'Davious White, but in a team that gets a lot of their explosive plays through yards after catch, Dane Jackson, you can say what you want about him having been beat and some of the balls didn't get completed that he got beat on. He's done a really good job, similar to Levi Wallace, and being in position and making tackles. And that's going to be super important in a game like this.
Yeah, for sure. I think it really puts them in a position where it's critical to have that. And you see that in the defensive matchups here. Both teams are middle of the road in explosive runs. The Bills are going up 38.
That's new for Bills, though. That's new over the last 2 weeks. They were towards the bottom of the league.
Yeah, so it's one of the better ones in limiting the explosive runs. Obviously, since that Colts game, the combination of the Colts game and the Patriots game, and then that run from Fournette in the Buccaneers game. They're now middle of the road with 38 explosive runs given up. The Patriots have given up 37, so obviously pretty even split there. Passes, the Bills are still the best in the NFL, 32nd, the fewest explosive passes given up, 26. The Patriots not far behind, they're 29th, so they're third in the NFL, or fourth, giving up 31. So still a pretty strong performance there. And then ultimately that brings us back to one of my favorite metrics that you do, and that's the DVOA matchup in this one. And it is, really, really hard to find
margins,
a more even one here. Talk it through this one. It is, tip for tat back and forth between the two.
Yeah, I think, Evan kind of alluded to it that, it's a heavyweight matchup. And I think it's one of these, if you're a boxing fan and you get a heavyweight matchup and it doesn't go the way you buy the pay-per-view, you eat the you get all your popcorn ready, get snacks, and everybody gets together and it's a first round knockout and it doesn't go the way you want it to. And then you get that part two, they decide to fight again. That's what I think we're going to get here without the wind, and get to see these two teams play up against each other, because it is super close and something's going to have to give in some of these. So overall DVOA right now, the Bills are third, New England's fifth. But if you look at weighted DVOA, which calculates with the most recent games and how a team's performing more in the moment, they actually have New England as first and Bills as fifth, just from the most recent.
That 7-game win streak, it's not shocking.
Absolutely.
That's there. And then a close game against the Colts. So it's not shocking that they're first with that win streak, and how topsy-turvy the rest of the NFL is. That's very logical that they'd be the highest.
Absolutely. And some of it's got to do with strength of opponents. So obviously the Bills beat Carolina, but it wasn't as strong of a, performance as how close the game was for Indy, with how much better ranked Indy is than Carolina. So all that has to go into it, but overall still matters. And the Bills are currently overall better on offense. The Bills are real close. I've been talking about this for a while, Greg, that they need to get into this top 10. And maybe this is the weekend where they can produce enough offense to get into the top 10, but they're right there at 11th. And I've talked about this for a long time, where whether it's the offense or defensive side of the ball, the Bills defense was sort of hovering around that 10th overall last year, but the offense was, tops in the league. And I said, if you can have both units in that sort of top 10, it doesn't matter where, if you're both in the top 10, you can make a special run at the end of the year. And they're real close right now. So the Bills are offense overall, they're 11th. In weighted offense, they are in the top 10. They are 10th in weighted offense right now. Patriots are 15th, and they are 11th in weighted offense. So again, very similar in terms of where DVOA has these offenses. Defense, Patriots are first in the NFL. I think that's totally fine. They're first in weighted as well. I think that makes a lot of sense, especially with that windy performance against Buffalo, holding Buffalo to 10. I think that contributes to some of this. Bills defense is second. They've been back and forth between first and second all year long. They haven't dropped much further than that. And I know a lot of people will talk about, well, the Bills beat up on a lot of teams and they shut out those bad teams. I get that almost every week when I post this stuff. DVOA, it does take that into account. It actually is, again, it matters who you're playing against per play. Like I'll post it in the YouTube comments or wherever you want. There's a good description of exactly what DVOA is if you're interested, and I'll post that for Football Outsiders. But the Bills are second, and weighted, they're third. But they're still right there, tops in the league. And then special teams, couldn't get more even over here as well. Special teams, Patriots are 17th, Bills are 16th.
Actually, honestly, shocking. The Patriots are almost never middle of the road in special teams.
Yeah, they've had some issues lately with some of the decision making on special teams, so I get it. And the Bills have been inconsistent.
Bringing it up here, the Patriots played the same teams, many of them over their win streak.
Totally, absolutely, yeah. And so DVOA counts for all this, and that's why I use DVOA. One of my biggest pet peeves, and I'm not trying to call out anyone here, is
by all means call them out.
Yeah, outlets and people that use NFL.com rankings. It's a yardage metric, and yardage is not indicative of the actual performance, right? Not all yards are created equal. Like yardage against, Houston is not the same as yardage against New England Patriots. Like those things matter. And so if you're just using yardage statistics, Sean McDermott said it before, like yardage does not matter much to me when they talk about how many yards your team gave up. Like who cares? Like if you hold them in the red zone, the yardage doesn't matter. So using those NFL.com rankings, I hear it all the time on podcasts and online, and people say this team is the 6th ranked defense. And it's like, really? Because on DVOA, they're like 27th. And so something doesn't add up. So I like DVOA. I think that it's not perfect. It's not a perfect metric. There is no perfect metrics, but at least it applies some context as to, individual plays and who they're playing.
So now we've gone through, again, the T-Shirt University Fresh Look. Make sure you're checking them out in the show description, tshirtuniversity.com. You can go on their website. But most importantly, go find them at the Walden Galleria. Awesome stuff there. They have their exclusive 26 shirts design that you can pick up there. All kinds of great Bill stuff that you can get in the store. But they also have a lot of great stuff on their website. So go and find them. Make sure you're checking them out. Great sponsor for us. And now, speaking of sponsors, one of our others is our Uncle Jumbos and the spotlight tonight. I'm going to go ahead and put our game predictions in the spotlight. What are we expecting in this game?
Well, I flipped it for some reason. There we go. So for me, man, I am expecting, just like on paper here is showing, I'm expecting a very close football game. I think Vegas is really good at what they do. I'm not sure exactly. I haven't seen the most recent numbers for Vegas, so I don't know if my score is predictive of what Vegas is saying, but I think it's going to be a very close football game. I think both teams are going to have chances where they do move the ball, and it's going to come down to red zone efficiency, which I think a lot of people think maybe the Patriots are better at that than they are. A lot of their games, they've gotten by kicking field goals and holding teams. I don't think that's going to work against this Bills team.
I called it out in that Colts game. And I think, like everything else right now, obviously analytics and the debate of field goal versus go for it.
Sure.
Go for it versus punt and 2-point conversion is the topic du jour. And it's what everyone is talking about, whether it's Brandon Staley, whether it's John Harbaugh, whatever
Belichick
it might be.
Recently, yeah.
Belichick on Saturday night, I had a bunch of people that I brought up the example because of Sean McDermott of, hey, they were down 13 with 9 minutes to go and kick the field goal where it was still a 2-possession game to bring it from 13 to 10. And later on, they had a possession where they had a chance to do it. And people, like everything, play the results. It was not a smart decision when he did it. Right. And just like it wasn't when we gave Sean McDermott a hard time of punting in the situation where he did. The results and the fact that the Bills came back and tied that game to take it to overtime do not reinforce that punting in that spot that we got mad about was smart. The results don't make it right. In the moment, it was the wrong decision. The fact that the Patriots could have come back and been able to win that game doesn't make the fact that he kicked the field goal smart. What it means is they could have won if they had gone forward and got a touchdown. Rather than having a chance to come back, they would have already had the lead by 1 point because they would have already scored the touchdown. And Sean McDermott and Bill Belichick are actually fairly similar in that approach of their style of doing that. They are not in the Brandon Staley and John Harbaugh school of thought. And I even think that has gone overboard in many cases. And I think that there was a really good analogy that Nate Tice, who was actually on with Anthony Prohaska. Anybody want to check that? It was a great show. He's an awesome guest. He's the co-host of the Athletic Football Show with Robert Mays. Really, really smart. Used to play quarterback at Wisconsin, was there with Russell Wilson when he was there. And his name is Tice because his dad is Mike Tice, the former Vikings head coach. Really, really smart guy. And he made the analogy. Everybody always throws around that football's like chess and chess instead of checkers. He said, it's poker. He said, you are playing with odds to give yourself the best chance to play. And sometimes in Texas Hold'em, you go in with pocket aces and somebody else has 7-6 and you lose. Yeah. It doesn't mean you made the bad play. It doesn't mean you did the wrong thing. It's just hey, sometimes your cards don't come up because sometimes the receiver drops the ball, or sometimes the quarterback doesn't make the right read, or sometimes a defender just makes an awesome individual effort. It doesn't mean your decision to go for it, not go for it, kick, touchdown, whatever it might be, 2-point conversion, extra point, was the bad decision. It just, football's complicated. There's 22 people on the field. Sometimes it doesn't go your way. And I thought that was a really good analogy in that, hey, you can set yourself up. I like to play blackjack. You know, doubling down when you have 11 and the dealer has a 6 is a good thing. That's smart. It doesn't mean you win every time. Sometimes you don't. You know, staying on 16 because you don't want to bust might feel good, and sometimes you might win and the dealer might bust. It doesn't mean it's smart. In the long run, you're going to lose more than you win. I think those kind of odds are things people are more comfortable with understanding. Oh, yeah, like if you're sitting at the table and you watch a guy stay on 16 and then the dealer busts and he gets all excited, are you looking at him like he's a genius? No, he just played the results. So when you see a coach kick when he shouldn't, punt when he shouldn't, kick the extra point when it should be a 2-point conversion, those are what the odds are of how you should approach that. In that, hey, in the long run, it works out, but sometimes you can trust your gut and gamble and still win.
Alexa or Siri did not like your rant.
Yeah, Siri was very upset with my rant.
Yeah, and one of my favorite poker moves is always to go all in before the flop.
Yeah,
and force people and with nothing. Sometimes
force people to make decisions,
and then you're sitting on aces and like, what does this guy have? What is he doing? Why is he doing this? So I don't know how that plays into football and punting decisions.
Well, no, but honestly, it's the way that would correlate is you are banking in those situations on humans not making the right decision
and not trusting their guys,
not trusting the right decision in the numbers and saying, oh, I don't know. That's what happens in football games is that people go, oh, I'm not sure. I'm going to do what I'm comfortable with because I feel more comfortable folding in case you have something awesome.
Right.
And they do.
And we don't know how the cards are going to play out.
Yes. Rather than going with it.
Sure.
And I think that's obviously shifting in the NFL now, but I do think that just like in cards, people play the results and not the process. And
it's frustrating to see for sure. And that conversation, I think, is going to go on for a few years here as the NFL changes and people are more aggressive and you see the results later. And that's just how this league is. But back to my...
Yeah, so you asked about the numbers here, so I'll give you the formal ones. Vegas has it right now, the over-under at 43.5, and they have Buffalo plus 2.5, so the Patriots are minus 2.5. So roughly 24-21 Patriots is what Vegas is calling for.
So I have this game at 2017 Bills. I think that there's going to be more field goals than we would like in this game. I think both defenses do a good enough job in the red zone. I think that both offenses have struggled at times in the red zone. I think that whoever can get over that hump and get that 1 or 2 touchdowns in the red zone is going to win this game and get out of here with a win. But I think it's going to be a little bit of a slugfest. I think there's going to be a lot of punting from both sides and more than we want to see. I think it's going to come down to whoever can capitalize on those opportunities. Like we talked about in the turnover differential, whoever can be +1 there, maybe +1 in an explosive play and get, I pound the table for toxic differential for all the time, but whoever can be +2 or 3 in toxic differential is going to walk out of here with a win. But I think it's going to be a close, even with a +2, 3 toxic differential. I think you're going to see a close score either way.
I think it makes a ton of sense. I think it's going to be very, very close. I have it 5 scores each, but I have the Bills with 3 touchdowns and 2 field goals, and I have the Patriots with 2 touchdowns and 3 field goals. So I have it 27-23. Mm-hmm. I have the Bills pulling it out. I think Evan was right on the back and forth. I don't think one team takes the lead and controls it the whole way. I think it goes back and forth. I think we see multiple ties. I think we see multiple lead changes. I think it's going to go back and forth. Ultimately, I think that the Bills' pass offense is going to be explosive enough to be able to make the plays necessary to pull this out and to pull the upset in New England. So again, Aaron has it 20-17. I have it 27-23. Both of us calling the close upset of the Buffalo Bills over the New England Patriots here to be able to claim the AFC East division crown. So Aaron, with that in mind, what are your final thoughts for the people?
Yeah. First of all, I want to make sure that everybody enjoys this Christmas. Spending time wherever you are with family, friends. I hope that it's fantastic for you. And then, second of all, Twitter is going to be a mess over the next few days. It was a mess all day today. Yeah. It's going to be a mess. I hope it doesn't take away from my problem with this is that it's taken away from Patriots week. And like I mentioned earlier to Evan, like as much as it sucks that the Patriots are good and that we're looking at all these statistics and there's paper thin margins between these two teams. And I think Vegas is pretty accurate in how close they have this game as well. We should be excited. This is sort of what I've always wanted is a big, massive game for all the chips, for everything. This is sort of like those Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan games years ago where whoever wins ends up taking it. Surprised Greg didn't credit Tice. Right.
Yeah. Surprised Greg credited Tyson didn't claim it on his own. See, that's the smart play right there. Is I should have claimed it as
somebody would have called you on it. Somebody would have got you. But
just to credit Michael, he brought that podcast to my attention. I do listen to it normally, but I hadn't listened to it yet. And he brought me like, hey, you're going to love this analogy, to check it out. So shout out to Mike to be able to bring that up. It was a great call.
So, yeah, I just hope everyone appreciates this week. I don't know that we've seen an AFC East game of this caliber, with this much on the line this late in the season that I can remember. Not just Bills versus Patriots. I'm just talking AFC East in general. It's been a long time. So let's enjoy this. I think it's going to be a big game. I think it might live up to the heavyweight fight that it's projected to be. I had people that aren't Bills or Patriots fans call me, and they were so interested in that first game, and they were so let down that the weather impacted
3
that
different
game.
Random people at work reach out to me. They're like, I didn't even realize they knew I like the Bills. I'm like, yeah, I'm excited for the game this weekend.
But they were also bothered by that the weather had such an impact on that first game. And I'm hoping that this weather holds off and we all get the game, and that the NFL gets the game that they deserve, which is a big time AFC showdown, winner takes all.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we're hoping for, and I'm in the same mindset. I hope everybody enjoys the holidays, get ready for Christmas, enjoy. I actually love the way this lays out. We get to now go ahead and enjoy Christmas, all Christmas Eve, all Christmas Day, and then reset the day after for the Bills game, and that it's at 1 p.m. We get another wonderful elite 1 p.m. football window for
with all
ourselves.
Those leftover cookies Santa didn't eat.
So many cookies. It's going to be wonderful. I'm really, really excited about it, but I hope you guys enjoy that. I know that there's so many different hot topics to be debated that are out there. Let's focus on the Patriots. Let's focus on getting this AFC East division crowned. We're going to have plenty of talented players out there to do it. Both teams, the Patriots had 4 guys show up on their COVID list today and already had a couple missing that they're trying to get back from injury. Both teams are shorthanded. There's no one's being handed anything this weekend. The guys that are out are not going to be what decides this game. The guys on the field are going to be the ones that decide it. And I think the Bills have the players on the field to take it and to be able to take control of this game. So I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to it. Like Aaron said, there's so many exciting things to have here. We wish you guys all a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, anything that you celebrate. We hope that you celebrate it wonderfully, but we wish you a Merry Christmas. And be excited. Like Aaron's sign says, Josh made the good list with the nice list. We hope you guys are on the nice list. We know that our sponsors are on the nice list. TeeShirt University, always wonderful working with them all season long. Our presenting sponsor, Uncle Jumbos. We love the guys over there. Nick, Chris, Alex. It's a wonderful family operation. Make sure you check it out. They're offering tastings, blind taste samples, all kinds of things like that. You can go in, pick it up, be able to give it out as a gift. I enjoyed my process there very, very much. And then always the guys over at Underdog Fantasy, use promo code COVER1, get yourself $10 free to be able to check it out. If your regular fantasy team's not doing well, that's a fun way to be able to have a little bit of fun here. But overall, on behalf of Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Thompson. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.